Okie dokie. Just fixing up my little background. I had my usually take my electric cords down. Good morning, everybody. Karen here for our weekly Q&A on YouTube. And I'll just get myself a little bit organized here. Oopsie doopsie. Okay. Hopefully my puppies will be nice and quiet. All my settings okay. Hey, Sarah Becca, look. 1 minute late. 2 minutes late. I blame it on my mum. She was always late. She was always late. I think I've been inherited one of her bad problems. I'm just getting a bit disorganized. And I even did it with all the dogs barking. I know. My mum was terrible. Everyone said if she's going to be there at 12, she'll be there at 1:30. All the time. Anyway, can change. Yeah, don't have to inherit everything bad, hey. There was never late for track work. Never late for track work. I was good there. But, yeah, I'm a bit disorganized. And I've even got my coffee. Okay. On time is late and late is fine. Exactly. When you're a track work rider, well, actually, it's really crazy being a track work rider because quite often you'll be late to other trainers' stables because it just gets so hectic. And trainers that are, when you're a freelance track work rider, if they're like, you've got to be here on time, you just can't, you just got to say you've got to wait because track work riders are in such demand and we can't force horses, can we? Sometimes things happen or you're going out and doing work in that. But yeah, and I think being self-employed too, like having your own business, don't have that structure. That's what I'm sort of struggling with at the moment is having structure sort of and routine. I've always been a big routine person, but yeah, not having the framework that I'm so used to has been a little bit hard, but I'll get there, that's for sure. What sign are you? Says the Californian. What sign are you? Oh, you mean star sign? I'm an Aquarian. I'm a little bit out there. I think that's what we are. But I normally love. Oh yeah, I'm just and are you? There you go. We're good. I think we're a little bit, I don't know. I'm yeah, I'm 23rd of January. So, but yeah, yeah, I know. I am too. More that, you know what I'm finding myself? Yes. Yeah. Well, there's so much that goes through my head and I really love a routine, but like I've been struggling. Like I retired from track work last September and so used to getting up so early and then going to the track and then coming back and having all my system and just not having that structure is really put, I don't know, I'm just feeling all over the place. I've got to, I suppose, trying to manage my own time. And then I'm always late. So I'm always out, except the 2 days this week, I'm always finishing my horses in the dark. It's just crazy. It's terrible. I hate finishing the horses in the dark. I'm always out there. And then I went ass over head in the mud the other day because I couldn't see what I was doing. And we've got part of the paddock is water's running off the road. And anyway, it's my own fault. So, and my phone's going to beep here. Have I got this down? Let me just, oh no, I need to look at it anyway. Did you, Sarah Beckett, mostly the same time? Is that confusing? No, now it's interesting. I've been looking into a little bit of that. Let me just put my little heaty on here. It's so cold here at the moment. No, it's at the same time. I think routine is really, really important. And I've noticed with my horses and just looking at insecurities in horses, horses love predictability, and this is part of equitation science. I'm doing the diploma of equitation science, so it's funny, I'm actually up reading what I'm going into in the next module in the course that I'm building. And I'm actually grabbed this book here, and I was thinking of routine and everything while I was reading this. Let me see if I can find it. And this is to do with training or routine or anything like changing the horse's environment. The importance to animals of consistent outcomes from stimuli or environment. So a consistent outcome for everything so that they gain efficient control of their environment and resources. Thus, the ontology, I don't even know what this word means, ontology of consistent and uniform stimuli response entities make for predictability and controllability of an animal's environment. So that's to do with training. But it just shows the importance of predictability and controllability. So a horse, it's really important for a horse to be able to have control of their environment. And that's what they do in nature. So it sort of it took me a little bit of trying to think about that, how it relates to training and everything. But for instance, with training, this is where there's so many welfare issues with training, because they can't get, with bad training, when the pressure's not released, just say the horse is asked to go forward by leg aid pressure, and then when it goes forward, the pressure's not released. Well, they have no control of the, getting rid of the pressure. They can't work out how to get rid of this pressure, and it's really, really confusing for them. I change things up a lot with fencing, pasture versus hay days. If he's not showing any signs of anxiety in that, I think I've noticed my horses are a lot better, because I was doing that as well. So I was, particularly with the weather, so I was bringing my horses in. And when I was injured, so some days I'd bring them in, they'd go in their yards, and other days I would leave them out and just put their hay out there. And then some days when they've got a heap of pasture out there, though I've been having a bad time with pasture, my horses got sick, but they'd come down and they were waiting to come in, and I was either working or I was not around. And I thought, I don't think this is... I just don't think that it was very good for them. I noticed then they wouldn't come down. He's not too happy. He isn't grazing today, but it's too short today. We need a couple of days. Yeah. Long as he's got ad lib hay there. I do think that a routine is really important for horses, and having some consistency. They know when their feed is arriving. I tend to feed at the same time, but what I've been doing, which is probably a bit similar to you, is some days having hay, some days having hard feed, some days in one area, some days in the other area. I do think having a consistent routine where they are expecting or understand, their routine does help their security. So grazing is, if he goes out there, like even if you put out, this is what I do with my horses in the grazing area, I put out hay. So I've got a lot of slow feeder hay nets, and I actually having a nightmare with pasture. I don't like grass. But that is my issue. That's a topic in itself, the type of pasture that I have. So I'm trying to keep them off the pasture as much as possible. So I have the slow, I'm just going to take a sip of my coffee. I have the slow feeder hay nets, and even if you put him out on the pasture area, but there isn't a lot of pick, give him a big slow, or even put your biscuit of hay out there. Put the hay out there so he's still in the same area. And he's still got his routine happening, but he's got a bit of pick happening, and also he's got his hay there. I think it's really important to always have ad lib, like a fibrous forage available to them if you don't have that type of pasture. Like green pasture is not good for horses. Does that make sense, Sarah Becca? Sort of, yeah, I do think, and like I'm absolutely on the same. We're the same star sign, so we're all over the place. And I have noticed that my horses are a lot happier. Runs and tears if I'm late. Yeah, I know my horses are out there waiting at the gate. that they know horses are so good at routine. They learn by association, and they're so funny. My horses can be at the top. If for some reason I'm early, they'll hear me, or they'll hear my dogs barking. When I go down there and they hear my dogs barking, take my dogs down there, they'll associate my dogs barking with me bringing them in and putting them in the yards. And it was interesting because then when I went through that stage of going out there and I wasn't bringing them in, they were coming down sort of later, but then they learnt, they thought, they when they realized it wasn't happening, they stopped coming down. So they're really good at associating situations and environments and actions together, and concentrate at 4. Yeah. I think routine, I think keeping consistency is important. And he's by himself as well too. He's got the cattle around, but he's by himself. I do. It's interesting with racing stables. That's so stressful in racing. But one thing that is really good with racing, as it's so consistent, and particularly off the track thoroughbreds, though they, depending on how long they've been off the track, but their routine is very, very structured in racing. They feed comes out at, well, most of the stables I've worked at, sometimes they get a feed beforehand, but they'll get fed after their work. They have their hay. They then come out and get put on the walker in the afternoon, have their dinner, and go out to track work every day. So yeah, routine is very big in racing stables, and I have noticed with my horses that once I have a consistent routine, I find that they're happier. I actually feel like they're happier. They look happier, and they seem to be bouncing around a bit more. So it's interesting. He hangs out. They have chickens. A client's horse that just left. He's got chickens as friends as well. He's got the chickens. The chickens hang out with him all around his leg. So, yeah, I don't have any chickens. I've got enough horses. They don't need other friends. They got the dogs and each other. So I've got, I'm going to go into my phone. I do think I'm going to have to go up and get another coffee, but I've got a question. Eating bugs. Oh, the chickens. Yes. Yeah. I love chickens. I had chickens. But I don't have chickens at the moment. Yeah, they do. They do. Well, I've got a heap of cockatoos, the beautiful white cockatoos and the galahs, and they're all around here. Yeah, spreading the bugs. The cockatoos here are really good because what they do is they break up the manure, but they don't spread it all over the paddock. So they just break it up and in the little piles. So they do a good job with that. I'm just going to find this question here. Got Minnie on my lap here. We had a bit of a question about weight and riders, and this is a really interesting one. And I wanted to talk about this because the few questions came up, and my apologies. Would you believe it? I'm in Facebook jail again. I'm a little bit over Facebook, but I got put in Facebook jail the day before yesterday. And then I'm already in Facebook jail, and I got put in Facebook jail again last night. So I don't know why. So I'm not sure whether I'm in for 30 days, but that was my page. I can't just comment in the group for 30 days. I don't know. Facebook has gone really weird. So if you see me in the group and I'm commenting as Kaz Gracie with my beautiful Laszlo as a profile, that's me. I'm just using my other profile because I tend to end up in Facebook jail a bit. So let's find this question. So I've got some questions on weight and riders. So I know a couple of the members have been asking about weight, and I know Natalie Ranger. Natalie, you had a question. You thought you had a question on thinking that you were too big for your horse. You had a saddle fitter out. So Natalie had a saddle fitter out. So I'm just going to bring up the questions here. Am I in my right profile? I've got to work that out because I have to pop into the other profile. Let me see here. And this one, we'll go into the group. So this is an interesting one, weight and riders. And I haven't done a lot of looking into it myself, because I've never been a really heavy person. Track work. Okay, so with track work riding, I'm a little bit heavier now, but I've never been a really light track work rider. So it's interesting with track work. You wouldn't think so, but there's quite some heavy track work riders there, particularly the breakers. And so even though you think that everyone that rides track work is light, that is not the case, particularly I don't know what it's like overseas in the UK and the US and that, but some of our riders here in Australia, particularly the so-called rough riders and the breakers, there's some weighty ones. And I actually complained about one because he's not only an unbalanced rider, but he is over 100 kilos. So it does happen in racing too. And the thing is, these are baby horses, 2 years old. But it just made me look more into some of the questions we had, maybe look more into the weight and everything. And I will get 2 questions. So Natalie, and we talked about this. So Natalie was talking about her boy. Now, I'm going to speak to my saddle fitter. He's away at the moment. And in Australia here, it's a public holiday today. It's Queen's birthday. Is it a public holiday over in the UK too, I presume? But we were talking about, Natalie asked if we could talk about this. So Natalie invested in an accredited saddle fitter even before getting a saddle. So that's really good. So let's talk about weight and horses. So, and riding. So the number one thing is to have your saddle fitted. Okay. Now this is interesting. I'm going to go into this, but have your saddle fitted to the horse, but you also have to have your saddle fitted to you as well. And this is interesting. And I've just picked up, I watched it a few weeks ago, actually, and I just rewatched it again last night about rider weight and saddle fitting, having your saddle fitted to yourself. But before I go into that, I just wanted to talk about the saddle fitting. So Natalie has her boy, her OTTB is a short backed. So I think I spoke about this, and I did share a saddle fitting video. You want to make sure that your saddle is in the saddle fitting area when you're having your horse fitted for the saddle. Make sure that, and even having this knowledge yourself, because it's interesting. I know there's a lot of saddle fitters around, but they're not all good. So having this knowledge yourself so that you can question. And I did put a video up in the group with Peter Horriban talking about the saddle fitting area. So the saddle fitting area for your horse is behind the shoulder blade, just behind the shoulder blade. And the saddle area should never sit past the last rib of your horse. So that's the weight bearing area for your horse. The saddle should never go past that last rib, and your weight or anyone's weight should not go past that last rib either. So if you just have a look at your horse and look at the area, and you would have you'd have to be a very big person for that weight to go past the last rib on a thoroughbred, or on a big horse. Obviously, ponies are going to be different because they're just little guys, and they're their last rib's going to be a lot shorter. So you wouldn't put a big person on a little pony. But having an idea of that saddle fitting area so that you've got just behind the shoulder, you don't want to be weight bearing down on the shoulder, behind the shoulder and to the last rib is your weight bearing area. And I know when I had my saddles fitted, Peter Horriban, he's wonderful, sent me out. So he's down in another state, and it was all the coronavirus and all of that. So he wasn't traveling around. He sent me up a special measuring thing, and I had to measure on my biggest horse, actually. So I've got a range of different horses, but measuring from their shoulder, their point of the end, their shoulder to their last rib. Why do I always hiccup in my lives? And that's where the saddle can't go past the last rib. So that's a really basic information and something really important to know. And it's interesting, particularly with, it's not so much well, never with track pads because they're little, but with your equestrian, your English saddles, they're a lot smaller, but you get these big stock saddles, these big Western saddles, and you have to be careful with the Western saddles and that, because they are just so much bigger and also heavier when we talk about weight. But if you do, I did look in Western saddles, and you will look at, even though the area at the back looks like it's going past the last rib, if it's a well-made saddle, it's actually not weight bearing. So you'll see that long bit behind the cantle of the Western saddle is actually up. There's no weight bearing on it, and you as a rider, when sitting in the saddle, you'll notice there's no weight bearing on the back of that, that flap at the back of Western saddles. So that's the first thing to know. So if you look at your thoroughbred and he's really, really short back, and you think, wow, my butt's not going to fit in between those, that last rib, then obviously that's going to be an issue. But horses they're pretty strong animals. In saying that, it's how we ride as well. So I'm just going to go into Natalie's question, because she asked me to have a look at, talk about a couple of things. This might be a good topic for next week: saddle fitting and backs, spines, size of rider, etc. Yes. So I did put, the saddle fitting. So let's have just a bit of basic knowledge, so that when your saddle fitter is out, you can sort of question them or look at what they're doing. Also, too, having a wide channel. On saddle fitting is so scientific. The more I go into it, I'm like, oh my God, it's so like anything with horses. It just keeps going, every topic, whether it's equine nutrition or saddle fitting or rider weight or training, you pick a topic, and then it's just like a rabbit hole down that way and a rabbit hole down that way. So there's just so much to learn. And it's interesting. Saddle fitting is no different. There's an excellent, I'll share the video after this live today, just talking. It's only a short video, but from, I think it's Schlisse, Schlesse, Schlisse Saddlery. And he has a YouTube channel, Johann Schlisse, and he's very excellent. There's so much valuable information. He's in Canada, the US. He does weekly lives, similar to me, but he does like webinar things. So he's got a lot of, I think they're paid, but he has the snippets of it on YouTube. And there's so much valuable information that you'll find on his channel. And he's an interesting person, because he was an event rider himself and been a saddle fitter from a young person. And he noticed that his event horse was not comfortable, and just the traditional measuring of saddles and fitting and all of that. And it took him down the path that he's on. So he's not only ethical training and that, but absolutely putting the well-being of the horse and the horse's comfort and how important saddle fit and rider position and all of that is. And also having the saddle fit the rider. So he's got a very valuable YouTube channel. And I have watched quite a lot of his videos. It's interesting, and this is just a business thing, but my saddle fitter here in Australia, and he does provide saddles overseas too, I think, because I was looking at in Schlisse, they sell saddles. So if you're over in the US or the UK, Peter Horriban is my saddle fitter there, and apparently he was in business, like he worked in conjunction with, they worked together with Schlisse Saddlery. Now there was a bit of a fallout, and they went their separate ways. So they're both on par. So if you're in Australia and you're looking for a good, knowledgeable saddle fitter, Peter Horriban is fantastic, and he is in line with Schlisse Saddlery and the knowledge that they have. They did go their separate ways. So I'm still happy to promote Schlisse Saddlery, because if you can't have access to the wonderful Peter Horriban here in Australia, you've got overseas, UK, US, and they do similar saddle fittings in the tree and that, but we did go into, so going back to Natalie's question, we're looking at saddle fitting and backs. Okay, so it's really important to have the saddle fitted to your horse. And then and making sure that it's got a nice wide channel. So looking also too that it is not too narrow. As I said, I'll do another video on saddle fitting for the horse, another live on that. But let's just do a broad look at it at the moment, that the saddle doesn't go past the last rib, that it has a nice wide channel so that you've got the horse's spine coming down, and then you've got a space and you've got these big ligaments on either side of the spine. So there's the spine and a little bit of a space, and these big sort of ligaments, and the weight-bearing part of the pads, your under of your saddle. So you've got the gullet, the channel, the pads, nice wide channel giving spine clearance, and the weight-bearing part of either side of the saddle can sit on these beautiful strong ligaments down the horse's back. If it's too wide, it's going to sit down on the horse's wither. It's also going to go past these strong ligaments. So saddle fitting is really, really important, and also making sure that your saddle fitter is up to par doing, because I've had some dodgy saddle fitters out actually in the past. So giving yourself the tools with some knowledge helps so that you can, assess your saddle fitter. Now let's look at, so I'll go more into saddle fitting in another live, but what I wanted to talk about, because there was a couple of questions on rider weight and size of rider, etc. Now, this is interesting, and I wanted to bring up some points. I'll have a sip of my coffee first. So there's a general rule. So if you'll Google, I think it's everywhere all over, Google and Facebook and that, you'll Google rider weight, and there's a percentage. So I think the general percentage is 20%. So the general rule, and I just jotted it down here, is a horse should carry no more than 20% of their weight. So this is going to include the saddle and your clothes and your helmet and the saddle cloth and all of that. So for example, the general thoroughbred weighs about 500 kilos. So you're looking at, what's that, 100 kilos, including your saddle. So this also just goes to, hey, Sarah Rebecca, sorry, my friend has a $6,000 saddle with the largest seat and looks like it will fit his high withers. Okay, awesome. Beautiful. Yeah, so have a look. So yeah, get it properly fitted. Now it's got to fit you as well, and this is what I'm going to go into. And I don't know, well, I do know that you've had measurements and all of that, but it's got to be able to keep you in the right balance. So you're looking at, just as they say, a general rule, 20%. So if you've got a 500 kilo, oh, awesome. Well, that's a good price. Beautiful. What's pounds? I'm in kilos. You have a large mind. Oh, so you've lost what? What's that in what's that in kilos? I'm having, is it double? So kilos, he's 1,300, so 260 pounds. Yeah. I'm just not very good at maths. Is pounds double kilos? So just say 65 kilos would be 130 pounds, something like that. 130. Let me ask Siri. Siri knows everything. I don't want to lose. Oh, wait a sec. Pound. Oh, I should just ask her, but anyway. First, oh, here we go. As soon as you even think about it, 1 pound equals 4.54 kilos. So that's about half. So yeah, so you're looking at you put this in. Oh, wait. So he's about 600 kilos, is he? Wow. I'm probably about, so my lightest, so I sit between 60 and 67 kilos. So what's that? I'm probably at my heavier end at the moment. My lighter one when riding track work and everything is 60 kilos, and my heavier weight is about 67 kilos. Now that's not without my gear and saddle and all of that. So, and I remember some of the trainers at the track work, I was one of the, I was definitely not a heavy track work rider, but they get you to go on the scales. It's not good if you had eating disorders. But I remember weighing 63. It was at my lighter stage. I was 63 kilos with my helmet and everything. So that's about 126 pounds, something like that. I'm a lot heavier now. I'd probably be about 67 kilos, which is 134, 100. Yeah. So, but that's just me without my helmet or anything like that. So you can lose weight, but the thing is, you don't have to lose weight if you are that. You can lose weight, so it's always nice to have a goal. You're not heavy, but you have to remember there's a lot more than just weight, and this is what I wanted to go into, because a light rider can be a very heavy weight. And there was a couple of interesting points that came up. That's something to consider when looking at weight with horses. And Johan mentioned, where did I write it down? So there was way back in the military, they had this. Now, this is really, so way back in 1941 in the US military, they said a horse will comfortably carry 10% of its body weight. Now, I would have been too heavy for a horse to carry that. So that is just 10%, 50 kilos. That's not even, that's lighter than most of the jockeys that are around at the moment. So racehorses don't even carry that lighter weight. Then they said 20% if the horse is properly ridden, including clothes and saddles. So we're sort of sitting around, just so you're sort of sitting around the 20% mark at the moment. So if you're comfortably in the 20% mark, you're not going to have a problem. You have to now consider too, look at your saddle. So I don't know, seriously, some of these, we have, the cutting horses. I mean, God, you think that people see photos of English riders and that. That's like me picking up my cat. I know, it's so light. And jockeys, I mean, a 50-kilo jockey is, they've increased the rider weight with jockeys as well. And quite a lot of the horses we have, they have weights in racing as well. So I'll talk about that, because a lot of racehorses, once they work their way up and they get graded, they've got to carry 60, 63, 64 kilos, things like that. And dead weight, this is interesting, because dead weight is a lot heavier for the horse to carry than live weight. And this is what your riding position, how you ride and your posture and your position is so important. So you can be a light rider, but if you're unbalanced and you are not carrying yourself in a posture, you are going to be a heavy weight for your horse. So I'll go into that in a moment. Let me see where, so generally at the moment, if you Google anything, you've got your 20%, the horse will carry 20% of his weight in rider, including the saddle and that. Then the thing is too, if you've got a lighter rider, so what is important is weight alone is not the only factor. So riding skill and height as well. If you've got very, very, very top heavy and you're sort of shorter in the legs, you need to look at rider the proportion as well. So considering that, a lot of in racing, a lot of shorter people, like you've got your jockeys and that, and you'd get to that shorter, sort of heavier riders, whereas if you've got longer legs and you're more in proportion, you're a lot more balanced on the horse. So as long as you are aware, ride in a balanced way. But just remembering the whole weight thing is not the only thing to consider, because you can be a light rider and still be a very heavy weight for the horse to carry. So why is this? It says, so a lighter, less skilled rider is a lot harder for the horse to carry. And he gives a really good example here. So let's just imagine carrying a child who's awake. And I didn't think of this, but carrying a child who's awake versus carrying a child who's asleep. So a sleeping child is a lot heavier to carry than a waking child that's holding themselves up. So it's comparing a rider who holds himself up in a posture and is this balance centered over their balance, over your ear, shoulder, hip, and heel line, and going with the movement of the horse, compared to a rider that is behind the movement or unbalanced. And not only this, now this is where Johan mentions something really interesting. So he said that it is important to have your saddle fitted to yourself. So this was something you don't really think of a lot, and it's not something I really thought of, and I never, when I suppose I got my saddles fitted to my horse, my dressage and jumping saddle, but in racing and generally we don't fit our saddles to ourselves other than the seat, so you look at the seat, but it is important to have your saddle fitted to yourself when it comes to your thigh length, okay, your leg length. And this is when I had my my saddles made up now. I was told to measure my height. I was told to measure, I can't remember now, but I was asked to measure I think it was my hip to my knee, and then my knee to my ankle length. So this is really important. The saddle needs to fit you. Even before it fits the horse, it's important to fit the horse as well. But if you have a saddle that doesn't fit you and your body's shape and seat, it is not going to be any good for the horse. And this is where Johan did a study, which is really interesting, because he was, and I'll share the video after here. It's only a 2-3 minute video, but he did a study in the England University of Cambridge, and he had riders ride on the mechanical horse. I'm just going to put my heaties on here. And where he measured the impact weight of the rider versus saddle fit to the horse and rider. And what happened is riders who rode on the mechanical horse and the saddle fitted them, so they were fitted to the saddle as well as the saddle being fitted to the horse. But though this was a mechanical horse, so I presume the saddle was fitted to the mechanical horse. But the rider that rode in a saddle that was fitted to them and put them in the correct position rode at half their weight than a saddle that didn't fit the rider. So that's really, really interesting, isn't it? So half their weight. So you can be a light rider. Okay, you can be riding at 10% of the body weight of the horse. Yet if you are riding in a balanced position, if the saddle doesn't fit you, if it's putting you in an awkward position, if it's cramping up your seat, if it's not allowing your pelvis to relax and also your legs to hang nicely around the horse, then you could double your weight. Even if you're a light rider. So that's really something that is interesting. And I thought that was really, really interesting. It's not something I've looked at a lot myself, though my saddles have been mated to fit me. It's definitely not something that is thought about in track work or look at riding schools. I mean, look at these poor horses in riding schools. Oh, my God. Not only does the saddle usually not fit them, but all the different riders that sit in the saddles, it just goes to show equine welfare issues are just rampant, aren't they? I worked in a riding school before I even entered racing. I worked in a riding school for 4 years, and I look back now and, oh, my God, you've got the saddle to the horse, but then you've got all these different riders riding in the same saddle. And then you've got beginner riders and intermediate riders. And, I mean, these horses, they were well fed and everything, but the riding school horses really suffer. Then you look at trail riding horses. So that's something really to consider when you're looking at, okay, you're worried about you're too heavy for your horse, but make sure that your saddle, it not only fits your horse, but your saddle fits you as well, because that can even double your weight if you're a light rider, and it can halve your weight if your saddle is fitted to you as well as the horse. So something really to consider there. And Johan also said, it's a rule in the Spanish riding school, and I will screenshotted it. So this is from a quote from the director of the Spanish riding school all the way back 400 years ago. It is important that the saddle fits the rider first before the saddle fits the horse. So here's why. It is of the utmost importance not to cause the pupil any discomfort. So if you're comfortable, you need to feel comfortable and not cramped in the saddle. With a cramped posture, it is impossible to achieve a pliable seat. Without a pliable seat, it is not possible to achieve oscillation in a horse's back. And if its back cannot oscillate, the horse will suffer pain and it will not be able to collect. So this is it basically looks at how important everything comes into, not only the weight that your horse is carrying, but rider position as well, and how you can be a heavier rider but still be a very comfortable and lighter weight for the horse to carry than, say, a lighter rider on your horse. And this goes into, and this is one of my passions, and I will do an online course about it at some stage. I love rider position and biomechanics, and I struggled, like when I was having when I was riding Trackwood, I had quite a few injuries, and I had a nasty injury where I ripped all the ligaments down through my left hip, and I just could not. Every time I tried to go back to track work or even ride my own horses, I could not ride. I was in so much pain, and also too, I struggled. I struggled with a lot of years. I was it's interesting because being a bit of a perfectionist myself, and the whole idea of, back in the pony club days and having lessons, they sort of forced, this is going completely sort of into rider position now, but the whole shoulders back, when I'm talking about posture, it's not about this fixed posture. Your whole body you need to be in a healthy posture where your spine can oscillate and you can move with the horse. Now, once again, this goes into a whole rabbit hole, like everything with horses, rider position and biomechanics. And this was a real struggle for me. I was always so passionate and loved riding, but I was a very fixed rider. I was taught to be in a fixed riding position, shoulders back, and I didn't have a pliable seat, and I didn't feel like I was on balance with the horse, even though I looked like I might be. I was very stiff, and I felt like I was just going to fall off the side and things like that. It was a real struggle for me. And it wasn't until I started doing what was called the Alexander technique. Now, I absolutely love this, and it's one of my passions, and it has made such a difference to my riding and riding position and riding balance. And it's a wonderful, if you do some research, I'll do a topic on the Alexander technique. It actually was invented by Mr. Alexander. I'm trying to, Ferdinand Alexander, I'm sure he was Australian. I'll put this right topic because I'll talk about it. But when we're riding horses, it's not about forcing ourselves into this fixed posture, but it's more about what is called the Alexander technique, and there's another technique called Feldenkrais method. So it's going with the movement. So you have to imagine that we're sitting on a horse that's a moving being, and we have to, the amount of movement that needs to go through our body to be able to go with the movement of the horse is massive. And if you can imagine a fixed posture, the shoulders back, lifting up is not pliable. It's not going to make your seat pliable. It's not going to make your posture pliable and be able to go with the movement of the horse. So you can imagine two dancers like ballroom dancers. And if the male dancer had a very fixed female partner, she's not going to be able to flow with the movement. And it's the same. We're sort of like partners with our horse. We need to be fluid. Our body needs to be flowing with the horse's movement. And this riding is an art in itself. And I really struggled as a very fixed rider, brought up in this whole pony club fixed position, and then did not feel good, and it really affected my riding. And it wasn't until I discovered the Alexander technique and working with body and posture in a more gentle way, and instead of strengthening. Like I remember having dressage lessons, and I was quite often, symmetry is really important as well as a rider. So I had one shoulder up and one shoulder down. So my dressage coach would say, drop the left shoulder and lift the right shoulder and bring it back a bit. So it was like this. And I mean, this is just crazy. And this is a very common way of being taught. And I was like, oh, I felt quite distorted. I actually felt very distorted riding. It was very depressing because I was so passionate about riding. And then I had my injuries and I felt like a failure and anyway. So I have an outlook now of riding, and it comes from a basis of what is called the Alexander technique and Feldenkrais. And instead of forcing your body into a position, it's allowing, and we do need a strong core, and we do need some strength to ride, but it comes from releasing muscles first and then releasing tension from your body. And the same with working your horse as well. And this is how I approach my retraining. And classical dressage is very much based on this as well, as you're releasing tension. And this is really important with Off the Track Thoroughbreds, because you need to release the tension that they've built up through racing for so many years, and then teach them to carry themselves in a more healthy posture. And then the muscles start to develop in a very in a healthy way, and they start to carry themselves in a more healthy posture. And then as they carry themselves in a more healthy posture, then muscles develop that way. It's the same as us. So having a riding coach that tells you that lift your shoulder up, bring it back because you're crooked, or more weight down through your right seat bone and more weight down through your left stirrup, that is just not going to do it. And instead, it's hard to explain this. You do have to go through understanding the Alexander technique and Feldenkrais to get a comprehension. But for anyone that's interested in rider position and being a nice, healthy weight for you as a rider, I recommend going and doing some research on the Alexander technique. Then there's a wonderful coach, and this he's Australian, and he's worked all throughout the world. He coached the German Olympic equestrian team at 1 year. His name is a rider, Richard Weiss. Now, he's an Alexander teacher, and he started me off. I remember, I'm rambling a bit as I do in my lives. But I remember, seriously, this is where I was at. So when I get messages, and I got an email from someone yesterday, and it wasn't about riding position or anything, but it was about something they're struggling with their horse, trailer loading actually. And I've had some people reach out and say they've been in tears about things and they feel so disheartened, they feel like giving it up. I literally felt like that with my riding. And I had people put me down. I had people put me down in racing. I was told that I was stiff rider, I was this and that, and really nasty bullying in racing. And I was in tears. I felt like such a failure because I'd come from a dressage background, and then I started having injuries where I was trying to compensate for my position. I really felt, and this is why riding position and balance is such a passion for me. And I would love to build a course on it and do some training about it, because it's made such a difference to me and my riding career and my confidence as well. Because once you're balanced on your horse and you feel like you can go with the odd show, or you just feel balanced and nice on your horse, it builds up your confidence. And not only that, as the topic that we're talking about at the moment, it makes you a much more lighter weight for your horse to carry. But going back to my struggles, I was in tears. I remember sitting outside I used to ride track work, and then I rode at a private track. And I remember sitting outside in my car when I finished riding at this private track, because I struggled so badly riding. I was in so much pain, and I just felt really unbalanced on the horses. And I thought, everyone else is balanced riding track work, and I feel like I'm just going to fly off the side. And this is a really interesting story, and I know I'm probably going off topic here, but I sat outside in my car in tears. I was devastated because I thought my dream, this is all I live for, horses, and I love track work and I loved it. And I thought, I just feel like such a failure. I'm not only in pain, but I feel like I'm completely distorted. I felt like completely deformed riding because I was so fixed. And I was writing this, even doing books up on, it's called Ride With Your Mind. And I'm not criticizing her teachings because it may work for some people, but it wasn't working for me. So not only was I, when I was riding my horses, and I was so stiff in my posture, and looking back now, I know the problem. I was so stiff in my posture that I couldn't go with the movement on my horse. I got the hiccup. I just imagine a block of wood on top of a horse and your horse is trotting and cantering. How can you gel and be one with your horse when you're like a block of wood? That's how I was. And then not only that, I was deformed and I had all these injuries. Like I felt like, and then so this, don't know her name, but Ride With Your Mind was the books. And I was reading all these books. Back then it was more buying books. I had all these like 50 books on rider position. And she said, like, imagine, 2 screws going through your calves and hooking into the horse. And so visualization techniques, so that you imagine that, or imagine your feet sort of anchored down onto the stirrup with glue or something. Sort of giving you these images to try and fix yourself to the horse, or imagine your seat bones like part of the saddle or something. I was trying to use all these images and not saying that because in a different way images work, but I'm just saying I was trying to force my body into a position and it wasn't working. So cut a long story short, I was in tears in my car, crying. I remember the car, it was a little cream Corona. And I was riding for this wild trainer. And I got the yellow pages out, which is back then, I don't know why I was carrying the yellow pages around in my car. The yellow pages was just like your phone directory, that now we just Google everything. And I remember Richard Weiss. So I spent a year down in the Australian Equine Behaviour Centre. I was a year down there studying, working at the Australian Equine Centre as a working pupil with Andrew McLean and Equitation Science and that. And Richard Weiss came down and did a clinic down there. And he, as I said, if you look up Richard Weiss as well, Richard, Richard, Weiss, Weiss. I think he's still in Victoria and he doesn't do as much now. He used to do a lot of clinics, but because of COVID, and I think he's sort of semi-retired, but he bases his teachings on the Alexander technique. And it's just such a beautiful technique, and it's literally saved my career and my riding position, and my riding career and everything. And he came to mind. I remember when I had a lesson with him, it just didn't, because my knowledge was not, I didn't understand it in one clinic. You've got to understand things to build more. But he gave me a lesson. I remember him playing with my head. That's the first thing he does, is he plays with your head. So I remember that. But anyway, I was sitting outside, tears in the car, crying, feeling like a complete failure. Everyone called me Stiffy at the track because I was so stiff in my riding position. And I looked up, I still know her name, and she's still a Facebook friend of mine, Alexander technique, because Richard Weiss came to mind. It just, I thought, I'm just going to see. And I'd already had, when I'm saying this, I went to chiropractors, osteopaths, everything. I spent thousands. I was diagnosed with, whether it was, but I went to physio, diagnosed with, what do you call it? Discs. I don't know, inflammation, then disc or something. Thousands on osteopaths, chiropractors, physios, all of this. And I looked up in the yellow pages Alexander technique, and I found a teacher, Jeanette Costin, and she changed my life. So I went, she was an Alexander technique teacher. I went and had my first lesson with Jeanette Costin way back in I was up on the Central Coast riding track work, so way back in, might have been 14 years ago, something like that. The first day, I look like it as a transformation in my riding career. The first day of, um, it was like a new beginning for me. And she put me on the table and did body work. And I didn't understand anything about the Alexander technique, but my nature and everything, I research everything. Like I just research everything. I'm just like, go find something. Um, so I had my first lesson, and then I bought all these Alexander technique books, and I read up the history of. He's got a very interesting story. Alexander, he's Australian. He was an Australian, what do you call him? Shakespeare reciter. So, and he lost his voice. So it's interesting because Alexander technique is very big for performers and dancers and that as well. So it's a wonderful technique for actors, performers, and dancers. Anyway, he lost his voice and he had surgery and everything, and he couldn't get his voice back, which was his career. He discovered why he was losing his voice, and through this technique that he created and named, like Aquarians do, I know research. I am full on. Like I will research everything I spend. I love it. I could have been a scientist. I even researched skincare. And my sisters, my family ring me up. Oh, I know what you're like, and they want to find out something about something. So I'm just like, I'll go down a rabbit hole of anything. I don't know why I can't remember the Alexander. Alexander, he's got a very interesting story. Fredericks Alexander, something like that. It'll come to me. But he got his voice back from what he discovered. He looked at himself in the mirror and he discovered that, yeah, I know, I could be a full-on scientist. I loved science at school. I really did. I always wanted to be a vet. It was amazing. And I love researching, and I love, he lost his voice. Yeah, he lost his voice and he had surgery and everything. And he never got it back, but he would watch himself. It's a really interesting story if you like, going down and finding these things. He watched what he did in his position and posture when he went to recite. And he noticed that he pulled his head down and did something with his head, and that as soon as he recited. And so it sort of goes into in-depth, and there's so much more to the Alexander technique than just the head position. But in the end, he got his voice back. He discovered the Alexander technique, and it's amazing. So what it is, and it's very hard to explain in one live, and then you also have to then put it in context with riding. But Jeanette Costin wasn't a riding coach or anything like that. So I went and had 2 or 3 lessons a week with her. They call them lessons, Alexander lessons, but it's also body work on the table. And basically it is not fixing your position, but is releasing everything. It is actually allowing your body to first of all release and then find equilibrium and balance. And it goes back to, this is really weird, and I'll give you one exercise to do. And I get this, I even used to do it with jockeys and track work riders at the track. It starts off, you think our head weighs about 5 kilos. Now, if we are carrying our head in a way, and this is so important with riding as well, but if we're carrying our head in a way that it's out of balance and it's coming back down and it's putting pressure on our spine, how can anything else in our body work? It's like compressing our spine and it's squishing everything out of alignment. It starts with our head. Now, this is serious, but after my first couple of sessions with Jeanette, I was riding track work. I fell off twice in one morning. I was just falling off the side of these horses, left, right, and center, because I was so contorted and so fixed, and also carrying injuries, that once I started to being a good student, like I am, told what to do, so I just do it. Jeanette, I think it must have started with my head. So all you do is you think of your head, you don't do it. So with the Alexander technique, it's not anything to do with actually physically doing something, which is really hard for us humans, but thinking of your head going forward and up like a balloon, but you don't do anything. You just sit here, and I'll put a whole thing of exercises together when I get onto the riding part of it. You just think of your head just releasing and going forward and up, forward first, but you don't do it. See how I did it? Don't do anything. You just think of your head floating forward and up. And then you think of your feet. You just even do your head thing. But you just think of your head. You've got to be one of these. I do a lot of meditation, and I've always been into meditation and yoga and things like that. So I'm that way inclined. But it's not esoteric in any way. This is science-based, but because it all goes back down to it. So what it's doing is putting your skull and your head in a position that you allow the rest of your body to come into balance. Without this head position, or without allowing your skull to release, nothing else can happen. So it starts with, and it's, once again, it's not about doing, it's about just thinking of your head forward. And then they do body work and everything. But it's like, and you'll feel, if you just think about your head going forward and up without doing it, and you sit and you breathe and you just allow your body. I mean, I've been doing this for so many years now. It's like I automatically feel like a release. It's like my head just sort of takes pressure off my spine. But I was so fixed and so contorted that I was like this floating head on a horse, and my body was still all squished up. So I was just like popping off horses left, right, and center. I was like crazy. I just feel like I was worse than what I was before. But it's a long story, and it just to go into it, it's when you're looking about rider and position, and there's another one that I did as well, and see, it goes so. Alexander technique, Richard Weiss goes on the equine side of it, but it's all the way you carry your posture and how you walk and how you sit down on the chair. It's amazing. It's a really wonderful technique. I had about 50 books on it. I don't have books on it now, but there's a lot of information on the internet about it. But Alexander technique, Feldenkrais, it's all about being a balanced weight on your horse. It's about releasing muscle tension. If you're a rider, so sometimes I was a very stiff, tense rider. I used to work in the fitness industry. So once again, Sarah Becker, I don't know if you can relate to this. When I worked in fitness, I started running. I was like full on training. I would sit on the bicycle and cycle for 2 hours. I ran like 20 Ks a week and 12 Ks every morning. I was just obsessive with everything. So I wasn't the relaxed type of person. So as a rider, when learning, I always was like, if I was told to put my shoulders back, I was like trying and everything, like a trying rider. Whereas you get some of these riders which are sort of like, no. So what's a Peloton Plus? It goes into posture, so it's more about release, and goes into more of that dance type release sort of posture first, and then getting core strength. But if you're all tight, so if you're one of those fixed tight type of riders, then releasing. But even if you're more soft, if you haven't got any core strength than that, this was also really good because you still have to have posture. Riding is all about posture. It's all about posture and being in balance and being able to oscillate your spine with the horse and being able to move with the horse. So visualize you on top of your horse's spine. You have to be able to be fluid in your body. But when I say fluid, not fluid in fixation, in sloppy, but fluid in tone. And sometimes that needs to be releasing muscles first and then allowing them to go back and move in a healthy posture. Anyway, it can go on forever, but it goes down the lines of yoga, Tai Chi, like Thai and all those things. So all those type of modalities are how riding, how posture and riding is it should be more so than forcing fixed posture and, fitness. Yeah, you need to be fit, definitely, especially when you're out there show jumping and eventing and things like that. I took the lockdown to stay home, get chais myself. I got this spring. Cool. Awesome. That sounds good. I've got too many horses. Okay. I'm running around putting horses in and out all day that, oh my God, I don't need it. Seriously, the first day that I was very big into fitness, the first day that I worked in racing was with Gay Waterhouse. The first day that I started at Gay Waterhouse and started riding track work was the last day I ever set foot in a gym. That's how hard riding track work is. You are just rock solid, fit, but also fluid as well. But riding track work, but it's particularly muscly, and it also just goes to show how how much weight and pressure is on the horses, on race horses. They're not light in the mouth, they're not light in the bit, and they're often on the forehand. Because the way we track work riders build up when we're galloping horses is just like Arnie Schwarzenegger, and that's just holding and setting and holding the horse back and holding the horse back. It's all to do with posture and weight as well, but there's a lot of pressure, not only on the horses as riders as well. Yeah, okay, you've got a year until we ride. So this is perfect to get him in working with your groundwork and in-hand work, and him to be getting in self-carriage and looking at you as well. So when you start to ride, you've got that year to get your saddle right, and also to have the understanding of how to approach your riding. So understanding, I'll get a heap more information, because I actually love the whole rider biomechanics. I really find it fascinating, and it was such a big learning curve for me, and made such a big difference to my riding career. So I'll do that as well. I'll get some training videos out on that. I've sort of got little branches everywhere on so much information that I have to put out there. But it'll give you, if you start to, even if you research the Alexander technique and Richard Weiss, it'll give you an idea of, the attitude and sort of like the approach to take to your riding. Because if you start going down, I don't know, I mean, there's so many ways, a lot of riding positions and that have, there's yoga ways and everything, but then you can go down more of the fixed one. I think it's more, I don't know, I haven't been in pony club and adult riding club at any of that, but I don't know if they still teach the, sort of like shoulder back, head up, fixed position. That's just, no, don't do that. I know if you've been to pony club and you're in my era, I'm 50, what am I, 53. And back in those days, it was the shoulders back, your pony club, and in all your traditional lessons, it was all about forcing the position. And now it is, I know that there's a lot more understanding and education that have come out. So it's definitely not about forcing position. It's about teaching yourself to be a healthy weight for your horse to carry. And that comes from posture, tone, and balance. So it's, those yoga people, they are strong and fit. So you need to, I know, put a stick behind your arms. Exactly. Yeah. That's just not, it's not about that. And that's forcing a posture. And if you look at it, forcing a posture in a rider is the same as forcing a posture in a horse. Okay. And, the side reins and forcing the posture in a horse frame, it's fixating something. It's not allowing it to be fluid and dynamic, which is what movement and biomechanics is. Forcing anything, forcing any posture, you can't force a dancer to be a beautiful dancer. It's not going to happen. So it's the same with riding and riding position. Anyway, I might leave it there. I hope that helped. I talked mainly about rider weight and position today. So then I've got into rider posture. And yeah, look, I think it all blends into one. So you can't just look at the 20% weight and think, I'm right. I'm 20% of my horse's weight. I can just stick a saddle on and ride and it's all okay. Because it's not only that, you can still be too heavy for your horse if you're 20% or even 10%. If you're not carrying yourself in a healthy posture and your saddle's not fitted. So there's a lot of factors to involve. And if you're up at the 20% weight and you are worried thinking you're too heavy, but you have a pliable seat and you learn to carry yourself in a posture. And the wonderful thing about retraining off the track thoroughbreds, we have to teach them to carry themselves in a healthy posture as well. So we've got to go all the way back to the basic foundations of walk and everything. So you're not up there trotting and cantering with your off the track thoroughbred. So it gives you time to work on your position through the walk, then to the trot, and then through the canter. So there's good, some people say that, teaching your position on a educated horse and all of that. Yeah, that's really good. But you then go back and ride an unbalanced horse and he's going to put you out of balance. But if you start with your horse and you're both learning to carry yourselves in a healthy posture, you've got all those months of working together. So we start back at basics with our Off the Track Thoroughbred, and that gives us a chance to start back at basics with ourselves as well and come to the attitude of our riding position, and weight in working with our posture and all of that as well. So cool. Thanks, Sarah Becker. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Did you get my email for the Kickstart course roadmap Kickstart course? I should have gone out to you, but because I joined you up, I may not have automatically gone out. I might have to send it out. So let me know if you haven't got that, and I'll resend your login. You should have received login details on that. Yes, you started. Awesome. Yay. Join me. There's a little a yellow banner. It says join the Off the Track Thoroughbred Success Academy. That's the new academy that I'm working on now. Oh, cool. Is it good? I added it. You can probably hear my little doggy Poppy and some of the not in the standing up ones at the whiteboard, but in the what do you call it, sitting down ones. You can hear Poppy. I'm having a mental blank. I need another coffee. You can hear her snoring in the background. She's on the chair here now. She's about 55. She's so old and she snores all the time, and you can hear her in the background snoring. So cool. Awesome. Yeah, I'd love your feedback. That'd be great. So I'm going to leave it there. And awesome. Yeah, great. That's great. Let me know, because it's good to get feedback on it. And from someone who has an Off the Track Thoroughbred and then hasn't worked in racing for, as myself, who's worked with racehorses. I like to, and I'm trying to approach it because I think most Off the Track Thoroughbreds, if not nearly all, haven't got the experience of working with them in racing for so many years. And I want to approach that because I think they're so misunderstood out of racing. People take them on after racing and not aware of their life in racing. And it's a massive thing to understand them as the athlete that they are and what they've experienced in racing is, I think it's so important, and it just really helps to understand their history when it comes to retraining them. So that's what I was trying to get across in the course as well, to realize that Off the Track Thoroughbreds are different than other horses, and they have quite often a lot of issues to deal with, and that we need to deal with it as well, and to be aware of that, number one. Anyway, I think I need another coffee. So, yeah, join the academy. I'm going to work in the academy this week. I've got some things. I've got a new training coming up in the academy called Retraining an OTTB with Ty. And I'm working on my YouTube. I keep getting banned from Facebook all the time, so I may as well put a lot more effort into my YouTube, I think. I think YouTube might be the place for me to be. Anyway, I'll leave it there, and enjoy the course, Sarah Becker, and I will see you really soon. Okay, bye.